Welcome to what will be the first of probably a bunch of tutorials on how to effectively play D&D and use D&D Beyond. So the first thing we're going to do is actually look at D&D Beyond. We're going to look at some characters, and really what we want to do first is I really want to kind of look how characters are made, because if you understand how a character is made, you'll probably understand more about the character itself. This is really important to really get into your character, is to know what's going into your character. And so we're going to do the standard build here. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see this here. You're going to have the character's name. You're going to have that here. You don't have to necessarily have to do this first. We're just going to leave that blank for now. We're instead going to focus on the features and everything. Okay, so what we have here is a few things you want to keep on. This is kind of all the content that you can use when making your character. Right now we're just going to leave it on the standard content that is basically the D&D content plus Magic the Gathering content and Eberron content. There are some other stuff out there like Critical Role, Homebrew, and so forth that you could be pulling from. But for now we're just going to stick with the main sources. Here it asks you if you want to be able to roll dice. That means rolling dice for your character on the sheet, or you can use the sidebar to roll dice as well. I'm just leave that on because it makes it a lot easier to use your D&D Beyond character. Now there are optional class features. I'm going to put that on for now. You can customize your origin too. That's a little bit more deep than we want to go at the moment, so I'm not going to worry about that. Typically, most people want you to use, instead of milestone, you're going to use XP. So you're going to click to that. So the XP you'll advance by collecting XP, either by killing monsters or by doing things that the DM will award you experience for. And so your hit point type, that's going to be fixed. It's going to fix your first level's HP based upon the standard leveling, and then you'll have to enter the rolls from there to increase it from that point past level 1. So we're going to use prerequisites where we allow to we can multi-class, or we can use feats. We want to leave that on there. Show level scale spells, keep that on as well. Encumbrance, we're going to keep that on. Ignore coin weight, we want to ignore that. Most DMs will probably have you ignore coin weight. It's just a little bit too much to worry about, especially if you're in a game that's getting a lot of coinage. The weight, encumbrance means that you're getting too heavy to carry stuff and you have to throw stuff away. We don't want our weight, the things we can carry, to be encumbered from our coins. So we're just going to ignore that. The ability modifiers, you can change this if you like to see it on top or bottom, doesn't really matter. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. Then public versus private. Private just means that other people can't view your character sheet, but public they can. So once you've picked out all of this, you're going to go into the actual generation of your character. And the first thing you got to do is you got to choose a race, or we can actually skip that. It doesn't matter. We can skip the race first, but let's just look at some of these races here. So we have the Aarakocra, who's the bird people, dragonborns, dwarfs, elves, Gensai. I'm not really sure who they are. You can read about them. These are all basically the standard D&D type characters. Aesmer are kind of like angel-like characters. They're kind of the opposite of Tiefling. Tiefling is a demon human spawn. Half-orcs are the children of orcs and humans typically, and then you've got like half-elves, which are the mix between humans and elves. And Goliaths are just like these really big dudes. There's a little bit more to them than that, but that's basically it. And then you've got the smaller races like dwarf, gnome, and half-elf or halfling. Those are the smaller races. So if you click one of these races, let's just go with the dwarf. Okay. So if you'll notice that it says 2 sub-races. So dragonborn is typically just one type of dragonborn. Aarakocra doesn't have sub-races, but there are some that have different sub-races. Elves have different sub-races. This one definitely has a different one depending on what element you want to be associated with. Gnomes have more sub-races. And humans have a variant on human, which is a little bit more flexible. And then we have the halflings have subraces as well. So the difference on, like, let's say we're looking at the dwarf here. So you've got hill dwarf versus mountain dwarf. And so if you click on each of these, it's going to tell you a little bit more about them. Typically, the difference either has to do with a racial trait, where one of these is different than the other one, or they give you a different special ability that comes along with being that particular type of dwarf. So, for this instance, stone cutting. Let's see, what is the difference here? Mountain dwarf, dark vision, stone cutting. So this one has dwarven armor training as its last thing on listed here, while as the hill dwarf has dwarven toughness. So this one increases your maximum hit points by 1, and then is increased by 1 every time you gain a level. Whereas the other one has the ability to wear a certain type of armor. You have proficiency with light and medium armor just by being this dwarf type. So let's look at the other things that are. We're going to click hill dwarf for now. So of course it tells you a little bit about the dwarf, and this will actually, if you wanted to follow this, you could take it to the dwarf page. It talks about the dwarf page here. It tells you more about them here. We'll come back to that in just a second. So let's say you actually let's do an no, we're gonna stay on dwarf. So the key features here: he's got a +2 to Constitution. They're a little bit more hardy creatures. They're a little harder to poison, harder to take down in a fight. So he's got a +2 to Constitution. So you're going to get that added to your ability scores later on. So we'll have to keep that in mind. They've also got dark vision, which means they can see up to 60 feet in the dark, as if it were bright light. So dim light, it's just barely light. They can see as though they were standing in normal light. And then in darkness, they can see it where it's totally dark. They can see as if it were dim light, where they can make stuff out in it. You can't discern color in darkness, only shades of gray. Dwarven resilience. Okay, so that's a feat they're going to have, or a trait they're going to have. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you're resistant against poison damage. So that just means that you've got a hardy constitution. If you've ever seen the Lord of the Rings, Gimli's always talking about how much he can drink. It's because of his dwarven resilience. He can drink a lot more, and it doesn't affect him as much because of this stoutiness that he has. So, dwarven combat training. Okay, you have proficiency with battle axes, hand axes, light armor, light hammer, and warhammer. So proficiency just means that you can add in a proficiency modifier, which we'll talk about that in a second. They also have tool proficiencies, so if you're using tools to fix armor or other stuff, you've got these tool proficiencies as well. You get to choose one here in a second. Stone cutting, whenever you make an intelligence check related to the origin of stonework, you're considered proficient in the history skill and add double your proficiency bonus to the check instead of your normal proficiency bonus. So they really understand ruins or other things like mines and stuff like that. Anything that's been carved out, they really kind of get that. So you have to think, because the dwarves love to go into mines and dig in the earth and stuff, and so they really know their stuff when it comes to stone cutting. Dwarven toughness, again, yeah, he's just a stout little fellow. He's got more more HP and gets more each turn. So we're going to go ahead and choose this one. And let's say we, okay, so since I clicked that, it's going to tell me what I still need to fill out here. So like I said, I get to choose a tool proficiency. So I'm going to click that. It says choose a dwarf's artisan tool. So I can choose a smithy tool, a mason's tools, or brewer's supplies. So if I want to do beer, I could use that. I'm going to go with smith tools. Okay, so now that's selected. I'm going to go to the next page here. Now it's all about what class do I want to give him. So now that I've got a little bit about my dwarf, I want to figure out what I want to give him. So dwarves, like I said, they got good constitutions. That makes him a pretty good fighter. Usually Some dwarfs are either barbarians, going to be a fighter, straight up fighter, a paladin. A paladin is just kind of a holy fighter. So we've got different types of characters. They do different roles. So we've got one that's called a tank, and so the tank is just the guy who takes all the damage and kind of gets between the other characters and the monster, and just really takes all the damage and tries to do a one-on-one fight with the monster. And so that's usually a fighter wearing, really heavy armor, or a paladin who's wearing a lot of armor and trying to just protect the rest of everybody else while this monster is distracted on him. A barbarian can sometimes do that if they've got the right build, if you've got the right build on them, but generally they're more of a damage dealer, or what we call DPS. And so that is really the rest of the characters are either support characters or what we call damage characters, where they want to get in there and create damage, but maybe not frontline fighters like the tanks are. And so you've got a barbarian who just runs in and starts hacking away at stuff. You've got a monk who does something similar, but with his fists. You get in there and just punch the crap out of stuff. You've got the ranger who will either go in and sneak in and kind of use his swords in close range, or he will stand back a bit and kind of pick off targets with shots from his bow or crossbow. And then you've got the rogue who likes to avoid confrontation for the most part, but can, if he's not being seen, he can jump in and do some quick damage with his sneak attack and so forth. And then you have, like I said, some more support characters like the bard. The bard is there. The bard usually gets overlooked a lot because they're not really about fighting. They're more about cheering other people on and helping the other characters do their best. And so, I don't know if you've ever seen the show The Witcher. He's got a bard in it, and he's always singing. In D&D, that singing and that kind of musical influence helps raise the spirits of the other fighters and helps increase their battle potential. So there's a lot of magic spells and stuff that they kind of intertwine with music to kind of help boost their party. The druid, they are a bit of a fighter, but they're also a bit of a magic user. They can heal. They're kind of an all-purpose character. They do a bunch of different things. They can be a middle-range fighter shooting a bow. They can go in and attack. They can shapeshift sometimes and turn themselves into a bear, so then they can go up and tank. They can, stand back and just heal their party. Different things. They're just kind of more of an all-purpose, but that kind of weakens them in a sense because they're not like specifically one thing, so it makes them a little bit less in each of those areas. The sorcerer, warlock, and wizard are all fairly similar in the way that they are. They're just different ways that the weakest of these, like physically, is going to be the wizard. The wizard has the most spells capability. He can actually learn spells and write them down in his book, and continually get more spells and actually reach the highest levels as far as spells go. But they are just very weak, easy to take down, and have no constitution at all. I mean, they're just... We call them sometimes what we call glass cannons. They're really powerful, but they break really easy. And so they have to kind of stand at the back or just, be protected by the other members of the party. The sorcerer and the warlock are kind of glass cannons, but not entirely. They're not as bad. The warlock especially can actually use some weapons and actually go in and fight a little bit more. The warlock or the sorcerer can do so as well, but they're just more of a supportish, a little bit more supportish than the wizard is. The wizard is all about just taking the fight with spells to the enemy. And doing other things whenever you're not in combat. Now, the cleric is where your healing comes in. So the cleric, and it's not a support like completely helpless, which is nice because your healer shouldn't be entirely helpless. The druid could probably get his butt kicked pretty easily in a one-on-one fight, but they can also heal. Whereas the cleric, it can heal, and it's probably one of the better healers in the group. But they also can have a pretty good constitution, especially if you give them a character make them out of a character like a dwarf or so another one of the more stout characters or races. So we're actually going to click on cleric. And so this tells us a little bit about the cleric. Their hit die is D8. We'll talk more about that. Their primary ability for using their spells is going to be wisdom. Each of the spellcasters will have a different... there's 4 different areas that they might be using as their spellcasting ability. Druids use wisdom. Paladins use charisma, so do sorcerers. Warlocks also use charisma, and then the wizard uses their intelligence to cast these spells. So what we've got here is the spellcasting. They're a conduit for their divine power. Basically, a cleric is representing their deity, and they are usually kind of like priests for their a fighting priest for their god, and so they have the ability to channel divinity into their weapons and create effects on their weapon or to heal and stuff like that. So this will show, whenever you click on this too, it shows you kind of like what are your starting first level stuff. So you got spellcasting, and he's got divine domain. And so this deals with, there are different domains. Most likely you're only going to be able to do the life one, which is okay because that's the one with the best healing options. So I'm going to add that. Now it says proficiencies, so I need to pick a couple proficiencies. This is what the cleric gets. They get a couple proficiencies. They're able to use light armor, medium armor, and shields, so they're already proficient in that. They're proficient in simple weapons. They're not proficient in any tools, but because of our dwarven heritage, we are. So we've got that already. Their saving throws, so this is where they are going to be proficient in wisdom and charisma saving throws. And their skills, choose from 2, history, insight. So these are the ones that really go with this particular... Each class is going to have skills that they might be proficient in more. This is the ones you can choose from for the cleric. So I'm going to choose, since he is... so history is more intelligence. Insight is a wisdom. Medicine is I think it's an intelligence, and then persuasion is charisma, and religion is also an intelligence, I believe. We can actually check that. So yes, so here is kind of the breakdown of where all the skills lie. Your athletics is in your strength, dexterity is in your acrobatics, sleight of hand, stealth. Intelligence includes these. Arcana is basically the understanding of how magic works, and history is basically a history can fall into anything like history of the world, history of things happening that have mythology, any of that kind of stuff falls under history. Religion, of course, deals with understanding various religions, your own or otherwise. Nature, understanding things in nature like tracking or the movement of animals or other stuff like that. Investigation, it also is intelligence, and that basically is you're like looking into things. Are you trying to study something to figure out what happened? Wisdom has what we call animal handling. That basically teaches you how to, or knowing how to do that, knows how to handle animals and how to be get their friendliness or how to work with them. Insight kind of helps you with like deciding if someone is telling you the truth, if you can really understand what's happening in a situation that may be beyond you at the moment. Medicine, of course, understanding how medicine, and it actually is a wisdom, so that's another potentially one that we want to look at. Perception is basically being aware of your surroundings. It's kind of like insight, but not exactly. It's more of just like how aware of you of what's happening in the world around you. how perceptive are you? Survival, of course, how can you survive? You know, can you do the things you need to do to keep alive if you were stranded somewhere? That's kind of survival. Charisma deals with deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion. So if you needed to pretend to be someone else, you had to use your charisma. You know, if you needed to deceive someone, you're going to use your charisma, and so forth. So let's go back here and look at our character. So we're going to choose to, remember, our wisdom and our charisma are our two high ones. So we're actually going to click, I'm going to click on religion because he's a cleric. I want to kind of keep with that theme. I'm going to also do probably insight. Okay, so he's kind of an insightful little dwarf cleric, kind of can tell whether people are lying to him or not. And then we're going to choose under divine domain. Of course, the life domain is usually the only one you can have there. Depending on if you're using this or if you're using the regular player's book and stuff. Alright, so the next thing is we have to do our ability scores, and it's going to offer you a way to do a generation method. And so the standard array gives you 15 or 6 scores that you can choose from. And you kind of just, once you use them up, they're gone. So if I put 15 here on strength, if I go over the next one, all I have left to choose from are these here. The other way you could do is a point buy. They give you 27 points, and you kind of just add, you start off with 8, and then you add more to it. Really, what you really want to do is called manual enrolled, and this is one that we'll do in just a second. But let me kind of explain how this works. So your ability scores, let's see. So here's kind of the ability score chart. So if you're an average at something, you're going to be in the 10 to 11 range there. It doesn't give you a score, it doesn't hurt you anyway. If you're not so smart, you would be down, like if you're not a very smart person and, thinking makes your brain hurt, you're going to be in the 8 or 9, or maybe even like the 6 or 7. Most animals are listed under the 2 and 3. Some of the monsters are listed in this area because they're not super intelligent. If you're really smart, like a gnome or a wizard or stuff, you're going to have a higher intelligence. Typically, you'll never get past 20, but there are some creatures out there that have these super high intelligences. Or super high numbers. So strength and stuff, if you're just average strength, you're going to be right here in the middle. If you're a fighter, you're probably going to have a higher strength. It's going to give you a plus. So you basically get a plus or minus in a direction for every 2 points down or up from 10. So if we go back to our generation here, we're just going to roll 6 here. It's going to roll for us. That's not good. Now those aren't great rolls. We could do what we call a mulligan and do a re-roll here. But for this we might even just do, I take the standard array because that's going to be less of an issue than that was. So we're going to take this one here. So wisdom is supposed to be his highest because that's his saving throw and his spell slot stuff. So we're going to take that and we're going to give charisma his second highest. Now he's hardy already. He's got a +2 to Constitution, so we're not going to worry about adding too much to that at the moment. So I'm going to take the 13 and add it to his strength, which will give him a +1. So you see it's already populated there. I'm going to take the Constitution and make it a 12. So now he's got the 2 and the 2 here. So this 2, his base score is 12, so it pushed it up to 14, which gives him a +2 modifier. And then, so dexterity, I'm just going to give him average dexterity. He's just an average dwarf. And actually, no, yeah, he's just not, he's not super bright. He's actually a bit of a dim bulb when it comes to learning stuff. So he's got some pretty decent charisma, and he's got some intelligence there. He's very charismatic. He's kind of wise, but he's not very good book smarts type person here. He's got some constitution because he's a dwarf. Not very fast and dexterous, but that's okay. He's going to be all right. Actually, we might even change that because he's only got medium armor. So let's try that again. We're gonna put that in, and we're gonna put the 15. We got 14. Got 10. Because you actually need, he's with medium and light armor. You actually have to have the dexterity. Has to be a part of it in order to get a good AC bonus. Your constitution is going to help with, there's a +1 modifier, it's going to help with your HP. He's already got that extra HP on there as well, though, from his dwarven stoutness. So we're going to pass that to the next one. So after you choose your, let's go back real quick. So dexterity, constitution, and wisdom are what we call the big three. You need at least one of these to be high. The reason for that is anytime that you're trying to keep from taking damage or trying to stop being the effect of a spell, it's going to probably fall in one of these three areas. So if you're just taking damage, you're like a tank, you definitely want your constitution high because that's going to help you get higher HP. If you're not a tank, then you're going to want dexterity high because that's going to help you with your armor class and so forth, as high as you can get it. And if you, if you're getting attacked by spells, a lot of them have a wisdom saving throw to help keep from being charmed and other various issues that arise. All right, so we've got this far. We're going to choose a background. So we know we can choose a background for him. And so we can say that he's a priest, so we're going to choose acolyte. And so it says you spent your life in the service of a temple to a specific god or pantheon of gods. So he's kind of a guy that's been in the temple for quite a while, and he's just getting out there. And let's give him a couple other... This background, depending on the background you have, it kind of changes what you get from it. So like the sage gets to learn different languages and so forth. So we're going to click acolyte. That gives me some skill proficiencies and some languages. So I can add in a couple more skill proficiencies. So let's keep with the idea of... Oh, no, he's not a very bright bulb. We don't want to do Arcana. Let's keep with his wisdom saving throw, or with his wisdom. We got medicine. Let's say he is, with his charismatic self, he's good at persuasion too. All right. So now we get to choose some extra languages. He already knows Dwarvish and Common. Everybody knows Common. If you're like an elf, you usually have Elvish already in there. A gnome, you're a gnomish and stuff. You have your own language already selected. But we can choose a couple other ones. And so we're going to say he knows Elvish because he probably has been around enough elves. Let's see what else we can say. And we're going to say he has Celestial. So he's kind of in the temple. He's been kind of learning how to speak to the gods. And so he's got Celestial speaking as well. And so here is his kind of background. Now we're gonna add some characteristics to him. Now this can help you develop your character and really help you really kind of get used to the idea of who your character is. And so it wants you to choose two. Now if you don't know which of these to choose, you can always just do a random. You just click on this twice and it'll pick two for you. But we're actually going to look at these and look at that. So I like this one here. He's not a bright bulb. He's very charismatic. Nothing can shake his optimistic attitude. Okay? And I like this one too. He quotes or misquotes sacred texts and proverbs to almost every situation. So he's like that guy who's just very optimistic, and he's just quoting various scriptures, even when people don't want to hear it. He's just trying to act the priest even out in the field. Alright, and so his ideals. So these are the things that he really believes in. And so let's see here. I think this one sounds pretty good to him. Faith. He has high faith. I trust my deity will guide my actions. I have faith that I will work hard. If I work hard, things will go well. So we're going to add that there. But that is a lawful. So you'll notice this, it says lawful. So I've got to put him in lawful when I get to his alignment in order for that to be relevant. Bonds. So what bonds him? What makes him? What kind of bonds does he have? So let's look. Everything I do is for the common people. So he is very protective of his temple where he was employed for a very long time. Now, what is his flaw? What is just his absolute flaw, other than the fact that he quotes scriptural texts all the time? Let's see. Here we go. My piety sometimes leads me to blindly trust those that profess faith in my God. Alright, so he's a bit easily won over by anyone who says they also believe in his God. And so, now that we've got that picked out, we're going to choose his alignment. So remember, we need to choose something here. Now, alignments, they have two different areas, good, neutral, and chaotic. And then they have lawful, neutral, lawful, neutral, and chaotic, and then it's good, evil, and neutral. So he is lawful good. He is absolutely the uprightest citizen who absolutely believes that everything, you should definitely do the right thing in every situation and obey the law and everything like that. He's never one to judge the laws of the country or anything like that. So what is his faith? Now we can find his faith here. I'm going to go to the source book. And we're going to look for him a faith here. So he's a lawful good, so he's probably going to worship a lawful good being as well. So he's going to worship Moradin, god of creation. Okay, so now we have his faith in there. Now his lifestyle, he's comfortable, living pretty comfortable. Let's see, we can give it some characteristics. Well, we'll do that in a minute after we figure out what we want him to look like. But we can throw in his height here. He's about 4'1". And for a dwarf, he's pretty stout. Even at 4 foot, he's probably about 150 pounds. And most of that's muscle, but he's still pretty stout. And so the age of dwarfs can live a pretty long time. So this is where that race thing came in here. So the dwarves, let's see, age, okay. So they mature at the same rate as humans, but they're considered young until they reach the age 50. On average, they live about 350 years. So we're going to say that this gentleman he's been living in the temple for quite a while. He's 100 years old. And he's male. And, okay, so those personal, whenever you clicked on those from the character details, they pop down here into his personality traits. And then if you wanted to add any other kind of backstory notes, you can do that as well down here at the bottom, but you don't have to do that right now. You can kind of develop that as you go. So let's give this guy a name. Let's give him a name. So we're going to call him Rurik Baldric. Let's give him a picture. You can either upload your own if you want a different picture. Or we can give him one from these. Let's give him this little guy here. He looks kind of like a know-it-all priest who just wants to tell you about scriptures. Alright. So we've got everything we need there. So we're going to hit next. And the last thing you got to do here is you got to give him your equipment. You got to get your equipment on there. So we're going to choose equipment. And we want to give him a warhammer, which he should be proficient in that. We're going to give him scale mail, and that's the toughest of these. Chainmail, proficient. I don't remember if he's proficient in chainmail. Let's see. Warhammer. Medium armors. Is it a medium armor? That's the question. Let's see, medium armor, starting equipment. We're just going to give him a scale mail. We'll go with that. We're going to give him a light crossbow and 20 bolts. We're going to give him his priest pack. And he needs a shield and a holy symbol, so we'll give him the amulet. He also has a secondary holy symbol, which he has from being in his priesthood. And this comes from being an acolyte background. So we're going to give him a prayer book. He's got 5 sticks of incest, a set of common clothes, and a pouch containing 15 gold. So we need to make sure we add 15 gold to his gold here. So I think we can do that here. We could do starting gold. We're not going to do starting gold. Alright, so, oops, I erased everything. Alright, so, if you do starting gold, you can use that to buy equipment. We're going to just give him equipment here. Start with. Okay. So everything should be in here. We're going to make sure that we clicked on inventory here because we want to make sure that we wield our weapons. So we're going to wield our crossbow. We're going to wear our scale mail and wear our shield. And we're going to wield our warhammer. Alright. So now we should have everything we need so we can look at our character. So here is where we need to make sure we've got the correct, it should have done this already, but we're going to make sure that we've got the correct hit points. So what we need to do is, I'm going to come here up to game rules, I'm going to click on cleric, and if I roll down here it says your hit points at first level is 8 plus your constitution modifier. So my constitution modifier is +1, so this actually should be 9. So if I take override HP, so now I've got the correct amount of hit points for him. Alright. The last thing I need to do is I need to give him some spells. And so here is the spells. So I'm going to manage those. So he has, this is what he can know. So he's got between 3 cantrips and 4 prepared spells that he can have. And so, right now he's only got 2. Those are probably added from his life domain. These are already automatic, always prepared. You see that right there. So we need to get his regular spells on here. So we can just give him some cantrips. Let's give him light so that he can cast light if there ever any a dark spot. He doesn't really need it in for himself, but he can do that. He's going to use Spare the Dying, that which will help people if they get knocked down and are doing death saving throws. We're going to give him Sacred Flame, and that's kind of an attack one, okay, one that he can cast, and it's kind of a long distance. And let's look at first levels. So first level spells he can have up to 4. We're going to prepare a Healing Word. We're going to prepare Detect Magic, so he can check for magic out there. We're going to prepare Shield of Faith, so he can use that for help or protection. And let's give him another long-range type of spell. So we've got all that prepared here. Excellent. So we got the equipment. We're also going to add in the Explorer's Pack. Because even though he had a Priest Pack, I'm going to give him an Explorer's Pack too. He's been to the store, he's been to the shop, and he's got himself an Explorer's Pack. So, I typed it in, so add that to his gear. Alright, so he's got that as well. So that's going to give us some stuff like food and stuff to last for 10 days out in the wilderness. Alright, so this character is ready to go. Alright, so the next video we'll go over the characters that we have for a party and kind of talk about what it is, how to use each of those characters, and maybe do it in a mock battle